You won't?
You can't go to it.
Oh.
You can't get large. You have to get a small one. Because all of a sudden you got the caffeine shot. Oh, hell.
Oh, show the bottom.
So
Our little Jones with a...
he's getting
The bottom actually says shit shitter.
Please enter your participant or moderator code followed by the pound
That was
key.
just for at home.
That's funny.
Please say your name followed by the pound key. You are the first participant in the conference.
So I drank the whole thing before I did the Buffalo football game. I was totally wired for sitting in the press box.
So we were down
That's my latest picture.
and me and my friend Kathy, we went and stayed the weekends we were down at her daughter's house.
I gotta get out there.
Sunday morning,
All across the sky and...
Dunkin',
Then
Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. And we got coffee and
Morning.
some
plugging
breakfast
away, but boy, the moisture
Well, I didn't eat
plummeted.
Some of it's down to
because I wasn't
14.
on the leave.
Right.
And
No, we just
So
can...
we were doing, we had something that 15 on
by
it.
the time we
Yeah.
got home, I felt
All right, we're gonna say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consider for approval minutes and agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
Motion by Derby and seconded by Jensvold to approve the minutes and agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Number 2, Iowa
We won't be here
Secretary,
till 9:15.
9:15. Okay. Scott,
Morning,
good morning. How are you doing?
pretty good. All of our construction projects are substantially complete for this summer, so that's a good feeling as we start to get freezing temperatures, but a pretty nice week out there right now. So our guys are, a couple projects left that are not like normal bridge projects, but we got a borrow pit that needs to be pushed back together. And we had one of the bridge projects we were working on, the farmer requested a little bit more fill, so a couple things like that we'll be doing here this fall while it's cold. The guys are out mowing, trying to get all that done before snow.
Is it normal that they go up into the fields and mow, or is it just only on just really bad spots? Or
Well, the more time we get in the fall with the mowers before snow, the more we'll mow. We'll just kind of keep them going. It's normal for them to go up on the back slopes and try to get everything that's above the surface of the road. The more time we can spend doing that, the less time we'll have drifting problems in the winter. It's nice when farmers take care of that kind of thing too. That helps as well. So yeah, they're doing back slopes. They're doing spots where it's tall grass and tall weeds, and it sticks above the surface of the road. It's going to cause problems in the winter.
just seems like they're doing a lot more of it this year, but maybe it's just because it's been nice, huh?
Yeah, that could be. I know Ethan's made it a priority for all the guys to get their time in the mowers and get around their routes. Even the guys on the dirt crew are, getting some time with it too to make sure their routes are mowed up well before winter.
I would guess just the drier conditions will allow for better access to it too.
Yeah, I would think they can get wherever they want to. Don't have to worry about getting stuck or anything. They're pretty nimble, I'd say, in those tractors with the mounted mowers. I think that's all I got for regular updates. We're hoping to see gravel crushing start soon, but I haven't seen anything going on out there. I was thinking we'd see Falk out there at Lewis's with a pump and start scouting the areas out there. Haven't seen them yet. hoping anytime now.
You guys have anything for Scott?
No.
All right. Good, thanks.
Uh-huh.
And we're gonna move to 4. Consider for approval the resolution to accept bids from Dustrol Incorporated in the amount of $1,314,478.07 for project number FM CO 95-83-84-85-55-95 R74 South Paving. Award the associated contract to the same and authorize the county engineer to execute said contract.
This is the contract with Destral for the paving project south of Lake Mills. Project covers all of R74 south of Lake Mills, all the way to Hancock County line. It covers 834, which is the road that goes by the Rice Lake entrance off of R74, and then the Joyce Blacktop, 838 from R74 to the Worth County line. So this is a pretty big project. This is hot in place recycling or heater scarification. It's called a couple different things. It's not overly common in Iowa yet. DOT's done some, and I've watched some of this kind of work done in Butler County, and I think it's the right fix for this stretch of road. What they do is they heat up the top 2 inches of asphalt, mix it with some new oil, and pave it right back down. It'll look brand new. Then outside of this contract, we'll follow up with microsurfacing as a wear course for the road.
So they heat it before they scare?
It's a process, so each unit has LP tanks and a big heater, and then a kind of like a little milling head, and they'll take out whatever's kind of loose, we'll call it, whatever's been heated up to be loose, and there's a series of, I don't know, say 6 of them, something like that. And by the end, they've milled and kind of windrowed this top 2 inches, and then that's lifted up into a paving machine and paved back down.
So does this go actually into Rice Lake up to the clubhouse?
No, this will just go east and west on the blacktop, 834.
Do you have a timeline on when they would do this?
They're hoping to do ours kind of like June, and that's because they do they're an international, a national company at least, and they do work all over the country. There's only a couple companies that do this. And he told me that in Texas, they'll do hundreds of miles at a time on the interstates down there. So they're trying to do little jobs elsewhere and get those knocked out so that they can focus on those bigger jobs elsewhere in the country. So I expect them to be here in June for sure.
You know how many, how far they get each day?
I don't know what their rate is. They'll do 1 lane at a time. So there'll be pilot cars out there when they're doing it. I want to say a couple miles a day. It's my best guess. 2 or 3, maybe 4.
So it'll be a couple weeks project or something at least.
Yeah, I would think.
Without, it'd just be, pilot car for a little ways, I suppose.
Yeah,
They'd probably stick pretty close together, I think.
I think they'll pretty much take their day's work and block that area off, pilot car around them.
It's quite a process to watch.
Yeah.
Impressive that somebody thought of all that stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive too that they have so many semis in a row and all the equipment that's loaded on those semi-trailers. I mean, it's like say maybe a quarter mile's worth of machinery all stacked up next to each other. So it takes quite a bit to get them here, and that's why this project covers so many miles, is try to make it an economical size project for them to come up here. But their salesman's pretty aggressive in Iowa, trying to jumpstart this process for counties and DOTs in Iowa.
So what, how does this compare in cost to another process that we normally do?
Yeah, so the hold in place recycling and 3-inch asphalt overlay project we just got done, those numbers keep moving on me because inflation's so fast and our contract's not quite finalized on that one, but I want to say it's about $330,000 a mile is what we paid for that for our, maybe a 20-year fix. And this one is be about $100,000 a mile for this, and then maybe another 30 for the microsurfacing, so somewhere around 130,000 a mile. And I'm hoping for something like 10 years life extension out of this. So I think the math works out well. You know, I always boil everything down to dollars per mile per year. And
I think this will coordinate better with stretching out some of your paving projects.
right, we talked about that a bunch of times. We have a bunch of pavement that'll all get old at the same time, and if we can start to add years of life to these pavements without full reconstruction or hold in place type work, you know, the better we'll be 10, 15 years down the road. I think the numbers work out now. It's a moving target for sure, trying to figure out what the economical solutions are. But
Well, I think this would be a good project to see if it works well. It's been used elsewhere. It can save us some money for now.
So I have duplicate resolutions there, one for me and one for Carla, if you guys approve it. Once the resolution's signed and approved, then I'll make sure to get all the contracts and insurance and all that stuff lined up with the contractor
Okay.
and move forward.
Do you have any other questions, Bill, for him? Okay. I'll make the motion to approve the resolution to accept the bids.
I'll second it.
Motion by Smith and second by Jensvold to approve the resolution and accept the bid. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
This resolution gets output by a system. It's a template, so it asks for all of your signatures.
It's $1,300,000. We'll let everybody sign, right? Good idea. People will ask when they see this, is it gonna go into Rice Lake? Is that still on the?
We'll talk about that when we get into the budget program. I just started to work on that stuff, so
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, we will go to drainage.
Carla, they're here, if you want to.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do,
You want me to just grab them? Yeah.
number 2.
Yep.
Thank you, Scott.
yep, thank you.
We're gonna go to agenda item number 2, Iowa Secretary of State's Office, Molly Wyden?
Yep,
Wyden?
Wyden, yep.
Legal counsel to discuss fair and impartial elections. Welcome.
All right, so as Supervisor Smith said, my name is Molly Wyden, and I'm legal counsel to Iowa Secretary of State Paul Pate. originally from Muscatine, Iowa. So lifelong Iowan, never left, never going to leave. So I'm just really here to kind of talk about the processes and redundancies that are built into the election system in Iowa to ensure the integrity of our elections, the openness, the transparency, and the fairness of our elections. So I think that there's been all sorts of talk about how elections are run across the United States. At this time, each state individually decides how they're going to run their own elections. So you have some states who have moved to one end of the spectrum, think Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Utah, who run their elections completely by mail. They get to make that decision. And then you have, other states who are majority election day voter states. They have absentee voting, but it's limited maybe to members of the military, folks who are unable to come to the polling place on election day. And then you have Iowa. We're a little bit somewhere in the middle. About 40 to 50% of voters cast their ballot before election day, whether that be an absentee ballot by mail, or actually what's the most popular for voting before election day in Iowa is coming into your county auditor's office and casting an absentee ballot in person. But regardless of if that absentee ballot is cast by mail, cast in person, or you vote at your polling place on election day, there is a voter ID element built into every single part of the process so that we know voters are who they say they are before they receive their ballot. So in Iowa, just like in every other state across the United States, when you cast your ballot, this can vary a little bit from state to state, but at least in Iowa, all of our ballots are hand-marked paper ballots. There are still a couple of states left where you make your selections on a touchscreen voting machine. In Iowa, we have those available for folks maybe who are sight impaired, who are hearing impaired, to be able to use those, and it's a little bit easier for them to navigate, but it prints off a marked ballot, so it is indistinguishable from the hand-marked paper ballot that folks who don't need that specialized equipment are casting. So they're all hand-marked paper ballots, so you can see and examine the voter's intent when we're doing our hand count recounts, or like a candidate-initiated recount as well. So we do use voting equipment to tabulate. That's a requirement of federal law and state law. Your county auditor does not have the discretion to hand count ballots. And in fact, Iowa doesn't have the discretion to have a system of hand counting ballots statewide. That's a requirement of federal law that kind of was born out of the whole hanging Chad situation in the 2000 election. So there are standardized rules and regulations for the use of voting equipment. Here in Winnebago County, you utilize Unison equipment. The specific brand or version, probably brand's not the correct word, version of Unison equipment is not only approved by the bipartisan Board of Equipment Examiners here in Iowa, it's federally approved by the National EAC, which is also a bipartisan board at the federal level that provides assistance to elections offices throughout the state. Again, that was kind of born out of the Help America Vote Act, which came along after the 2000 election, where it was just noticed that there was quite a lot of differences about how recounts and the casting of ballots was across the country. And so what they do when they examine, when a vendor goes to the EAC, the federal EAC, is they have an independent test lab. And these independent test labs are certified by the EAC in coordination with other federal agencies like the National Institute of Technology and that type of thing that ensure that they are a impartial entity that examines, gets into, breaks down that equipment to make sure that it's operating as it needs to. And so it is recognized at the federal level. It's also recognized at the state. And in addition to all of the testing that it has to go through in order to be recognized at the federal level, our state board of examiners also tests the voting equipment with a deck of several decks of hand-marked paper ballots to make sure that it meets the requirements for voting equipment in Iowa. For example, in Iowa, we still test for straight party voting. We don't currently have straight party voting, but we do still test for it since it's only been a couple of election cycles since we've gotten rid of straight party voting. I think there's only like 4, maybe 5 states that still have it. It's on the decline nationally. But we do still test to make sure that that works. And for example, in Iowa, if you want to write a vote in, you want to write somebody's name in because their name is not listed on the ballot, you have to fill in the voting target that's next to their name. That varies from state to state. Some states don't require that. So those are 2 examples of the additional functionality specific to Iowa that our Board of Examiners tests before we allow the equipment to be used by our county auditors. But the testing doesn't stop there. Have you already done your public test? So before each and every election, and that is everything from to fill a vacancy election for a school board all the way up to the general election. For each and every election where election equipment is used, there's a public test of voting equipment. So again, to test it, there's a rubric that you fill out to make sure that the voting equipment is basically experiencing almost every situation that it could. And somebody in your county auditor's office has the pleasure of hand marking a big old stack of those paper ballots to make sure that the equipment is performing as it should be. So you have your hand marked paper ballots. That's basically your hand count because you know the results that you're supposed to get from the voting equipment. And then they run the voting equipment through a series of tests and ensure that it provides the expected result because you know exactly what those totals should be based on the rubric of hand-marked paper ballots that you have. So that's our pre-test, our pre-audit of voting equipment. And then after every single election, it used to just be after general elections, but Secretary Pate proposed a change to the legislature, and it's now after every single election, we do a post-election audit. And so that is where a special board of precinct election officials come in after the election and hand count the ballots from a randomly selected precinct or precincts and ensure that it matches to the totals from election day. And so, for example, after this general election, we will do a post-election audit of the governor's race, but to add an extra element of randomness in there, there will also be at least one additional office that will be audited. Any office on the ballot, from senator to the constitutional amendment or a county public measure, if you happen to have any county public measures, is up for audit. That won't be selected until after the election. So if there are any would-be bad actors out there, they have absolutely no idea. Every single ballot and every single race is up for audit. So that's an additional thing that we're doing after this general election. And then, of course, we saw a district-wide recount in the 2nd Congressional District, which is now kind of the 1st Congressional District, but sort of the central, south to central eastern Iowa, Marionette, Miller, Meeks. And so there was a hand count recount in 24 of those counties. Now, we did see, obviously, a little bit of movement in the totals from Election Day. That's to be expected when you're talking about a hand recount because you can look at voter intent. So if I put hearts or stars or circles of the candidate that I wanted to vote for but neglected to follow the instructions and actually fill in the voting target, in a hand recount, you can count those ballots. So we did see a little bit of movement. I think it was a couple dozen votes for a whole entire congressional district. So there was a whole district-wide hand recount following the 2020 election as well. So all of our equipment in Iowa, again, uses hand-marked paper ballots. It's audited and tested before the election, after the election, and it does not have the capability to connect to the internet. So I'm happy to answer any questions anybody may have. I'm happy to walk through the entire process from start to finish, from this is what we do when it's time to order ballots, to this is how long we retain everything after the election and what that retention process looks like. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody may have about how the process works here in Iowa. I'm an expert in Iowa elections. I'm not an expert in any other state's elections, though. So I could certainly put you in touch with my counterpart in another state, but I'm not qualified to answer questions about how other states operate their elections.
You mentioned this board that looks over everything and approves things.
Yeah.
What type of people serve on that board? Are they election officials?
Yes. So at the EAC level, these are folks that are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. They're like professionals. That is their full-time job to be the commissioner of the EAC. And I'm not sure how many, they're expanding their staff as elections become much more high profile. But the folks who are looking at and advising them on who to approve the equipment, I mean, these are cybersecurity experts. They're folks that do compliance for elections. At the state level, we have two folks who are elections officials that serve on the board, and then an expert in cybersecurity. And then if they ever need me, I serve as legal counsel to the board.
So you test every single machine in 99 counties?
Correct, yes. Yep. The county auditors do those. They're required to publish when they're going to do their public test to make sure that the public is aware of it. They can come and watch. Members of the public, if they contact the auditor's office ahead of time, can actually fill out their own test deck. So they can supply you with some ballots. You can mark those as you see fit. They can clear out one machine. Obviously, in a general election, we report the results by home precinct. So if I had ballots that I marked for, and I apologize, I don't know the names of your guys' precinct, but if I had ballots for precinct 1, I can only put them in the machine for precinct 1. If I went to put them in the machine for precinct 2, it would spit them out and tell me that it doesn't recognize the ballots.
I would hope it would.
Right, and that is one thing that is part of the public test of voting equipment, is to make sure that it's only accepting and it's only programmed to accept the ballots for that precinct. The one exception, of course, would be the machine used to count absentee ballots. It would accept every ballot style in the county, but it's programmed to break those down and report them back by the residential precinct. So that's why, for example, for the general election, you can get the results for precinct 1, and it'll show you these are the folks that voted absentee in precinct 1, and these are the results for absentee in precinct 1, and then these are the election day results from the polling place for precinct 1. So yep, there are every single county is going through that process. The deadline to do the public test is 7 p.m. the day before the election, and that's kind of built in there because the law does require, if you notice any issues when conducting your public test, and we have counties do it very early on in October. If there ever was a programming issue, that gives you time to work with your vendor to get that corrected and retest the equipment. So if a machine does not pass the pre-tested voting equipment, it cannot be used in the election.
So how many machines do we have?
We have 11.
Do you guys have a different absentee machine?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep, that became really popular in 2020. You can get ones that are that they can count the ballots a little bit faster. So you don't have one of your ASVP board members sitting there feeding it in. You know, the polling place ones, it's a couple, you can feed one in and then it takes a couple of seconds, you know, it's not as quick as the high-speed scanners. Some of the ones, like the one that, I think Polk County actually has a couple of them, I mean, it can count like 850 ballots in an hour or something like that, so.
So didn't we have trouble with one, like damaging it when they were doing a recount or something? Did the machine eat it or something?
No,
That-
at the last election, it had a problem where it would catch and then it would count it again. So we had to do a recount for that, for that, precinct.
So how did you know that it counted it again?
Because when it went through, it added a second ballot when it went in. So, and our numbers at the end of the night didn't match. So I called an administrative recount for those precincts. It was a statewide problem. There was, I don't know how many counties had that same
Yeah,
issue.
a handful of Unison counties, and so there's been an update that has taken effect to assist with that problem. Basically, there was a reason that it needed to if for example I insert a blank ballot, the machine spits it out and it prints a little ticket that tells me what's wrong with the ballot, and so but it doesn't actually count it. In this instance, it was processing it and spitting it back out. But because of the redundancies that we have in place, so you guys do the canvass for the whole county. Well, at each and every precinct, after the polls close, there's a mini public canvass. So if and I don't even have to be a registered voter of the county, if I wanted to show up to precinct 1 at 8:05 and watch the precinct canvass, I could watch the precinct election officials print the official record of the election, which is this big old giant receipt tape. In some counties, we'll even print 2 of them, so wait for the big receipt tape to print. And only once that is printed, then can you generate the electronic results that we use for the unofficial election night reporting. But while that receipt tape is printing, the precinct election officials have to take an inventory of every single ballot and item in the polling place. So they keep an account of how many ballots the auditor's office delivered, how many of those were voted, how many of them were provisional ballots. So they're in special envelopes that the auditor's office is going to hold on to. Maybe I forgot my driver's license. I need to come into the auditor's office to show my driver's license. And then spoiled ballots. I got really excited and I voted for 3 people for supervisor instead of just 2. And so I spoiled my ballot. And so they take an accounting of each and every single piece that's in there. And that's how the discrepancies were in some cases because they knew how many people had checked in, and the counter that you see when you feed your ballot into the machine didn't match the number of declarations of eligibility. So some people figured it out at 11 a.m. or 2 p.m. But everybody was able to conclusively determine that when they were doing that public canvass, and that's why we were able to immediately across the state put into action that redundancy plan to do an administrative recount and make sure that we ran those ballots through again and got those totals 100% accurate.
So, what would you say to someone who is worried about the absentee process not being as safe as voting at the polls?
Sure. So I think that there's a couple of things about the absentee process. One, in Iowa, whether you vote absentee by mail or absentee in person, there's a voter ID component. And actually, when you vote absentee in person, there's a double voter ID component because you have to fill out your absentee ballot request form and provide either your driver's license or your voter PIN number. And you actually have to physically show your ID, just like at the polling place. So voters are required to provide, I think it's like 6 data points, and that's the necessary information that they're required to provide in order to get an absentee ballot. And there are all sorts of security measures that are built into these ballots. The weight of the paper, the tick marks that are on the side, the the way that they're endorsed, so you actually can go back and trace and figure out for an absentee ballot who in the auditor's office prepared the packet to send to the voter. They have specialized labels on them that are created through our statewide election management system and barcodes to help check them back in. Special envelopes that are, designed using insignia that the United States Postal Service only provides to elections officials. So when your absentee ballot is sent out, it's because the auditor's office has affirmatively received an application, again, that has that voter ID component on it. In Iowa, we never, ever, ever issue an absentee ballot without having an application in hand first, a request from the voter. So we oftentimes at our office get calls and people are like, I received 6 absentee ballots. And it's like, no, I think you received 6 absentee ballot applications. And so I know that it says absentee ballot, vote absentee today, but that's, a political party or a candidate or some outside group sending out applications. Once those come back in, once the absentee ballots come back in, they're immediately checked into the statewide election management database, which again has all sorts of redundancies built into it to ensure that only one ballot can be issued per voter and only one ballot can come back per voter. If you tried to check in a second ballot for somebody, you'd get like this big red box that says, ballot has already been turned in. And we share that information with all of our counties use electronic poll books to check voters in on election day. That program's not really sophisticated. It just has the standard voter file in it, and all it's doing is really operating as an electronic poll book. It allows you to bring up the voter, check them in, and print out their declaration of eligibility using a computer instead of the big old-fashioned poll books we used to look
So
for.
what's the fail-safe if somebody requests an absentee ballot and they put it in the mail and it comes in like on election day?
Yep.
But then they go to the poll and try to vote, it's not in the system yet, does it get caught somewhere?
Yes. So if I requested an absentee ballot, and I've been checking the track my absentee ballot function on the Secretary of State's website, I'm like, ooh, it hasn't come back yet. I can go to my polling place, and when I check in, do you guys use Precinct Dallas? Mm-hmm. When I check in, my profile is going to pop up, and there's going to be in huge red capital letters, outstanding absentee. And so I can still vote, but what I'm voting is a provisional ballot. So I'll fill out my ballot and then I put it in one of those special provisional envelopes. It's not gonna be counted on election day. I'm not gonna feed it into the tabulator. It's gonna come back to the auditor's office. And if my absentee ballot didn't make it to the auditor's office before the time polls close on election day, before 8 p.m., only then will my provisional ballot be opened and counted. If it came in the 2 o'clock mail and they counted it on election day and I've already got my vote credit, they're going to reject my provisional ballot and that will never be counted. But when those absentee ballots come back in, like I said, they're checked in, and you can print a report that shows the sequence number, the voter, all of that information, when it was issued, when it was received, and that report is handed over to the Bipartisan Absentee and Special Voters Precinct Board. And the very first thing that they do, in some counties, the auditors have the time, and so they've already organized all the absentee ballots and sequence number, and so they go through and they double check them. Obviously, sometimes they have to get a little bit organized first, but they go down the line and they say, okay, sequence number 1, this voter, yep, we have it, yep, it's signed, okay, we can count it. But while those ballots are waiting to be turned over to the Absentee and Special Voters Precinct Board, they're required by law, and then we have some additional specifications in an administrative rule, to be kept in a secure location, so locked with limited access, so that those cannot be accessed by other members, just the elections staff in the auditor's office. So that's a requirement by law that those be safely and securely stored until they're turned over to the absentee board to do their initial inventory. Which, I mean, man, there are so many steps to all the checks and balances that absentee board does before they even, start counting. That they check all of those in, and then they have to open them, and they're in secrecy envelopes, and then they mix them all up, and then they remove them from the secrecy envelopes, and kind of flatten them out before they're counted. And that process, the absentee counting process, it's open to the public beginning at 8:01 p.m. on election day, so anybody can watch once the polls are closed. But before then, to ensure that that process is transparent, it is open to up to 5 observers from each political party. They can be there, and they have to be able to see the process, to hear the process. I do know in other states that we saw, not in Iowa, I didn't receive a single complaint like this about somebody's experience as a poll watcher in Iowa, but we did, see images of poll watchers using binoculars to be able to see the process in other states. So while we did not have any issues in Iowa, because of what the experience was in other states, our legislature did go ahead and clarify and add additional provisions about the rights of poll watchers to have access to and view the process. So there cannot be limitations. Now, poll watchers can't go above and beyond the call of duty and engage in activities that they're not allowed to, but they do have a right now by law that's very clear to be present and observe the absentee counting process. And then, of course, poll watchers can be at the polls on election day as well.
Okay. Lots of information.
Madam Chair. A person passes, but they're on the absentee list, all right? That absentee ballot is sent in, but it's not sent in by the individual who actually passed. How is that handled?
Sure. So if somebody does pass away before election day and their voter registration is canceled, that absentee ballot is set aside and not counted.
So how do you know that person has passed?
So one, we regularly get files from the Iowa Department of Public Health that show deaths. We now are a member of a nationwide organization that has access to the social, this sounds so awful, I'm sorry, but this is the official name, the Social Security Death Index. And so that helps us catch folks who passed away out of state or even out of the country when their Social Security benefits are canceled. And then your auditor's office checks all of the local funeral home websites. I'm trying to remember in what year. I want to say it was maybe 2016. Our office had that added to the reasons that you can cancel because so few people are taking out the space to publish an obituary, but their memorials are published on the funeral home website. So based on a funeral home's website memorial, you can cancel an individual. You can cancel it, of course, based on an obituary. If you get records from the recorder's office that somebody has passed, their estate has moved into probate, you can cancel. And then we actually do have a lot of folks that as soon as a parent or a brother or a sister pass away, they call the auditor's office and let them know because they want their voter registration to be canceled. So we have a really comprehensive program to make sure that we're quickly canceling folks who do pass away.
Okay. And that would be on the absentee and would also be on the regular voting
Correct.
lists as well,
Yes.
too, because you have to provide the identification.
Yep, that's correct.
So at what point in time are the ballots then fed through the online system to the states?
So never. The way that election night reporting works, and so I think I'll give a little bit of background on election night reporting. I think that it came about after the 2008-ish election, where there were requirements and it was more codified. I think the Secretary of State's office even before then was kind of helping with that, knowing that there's such a hunger for election night results. But the actual code section 5015A, I think came into being in 2009. And so it requires your county auditors to report election night results to the Secretary of State's office in the form that we set. And the current way that that works is we have a website that can amalgamate results for the entire state. And so we're going to go back to the polling place. That big long receipt tape has printed, so you have the permanent official record of the election. That's stapled or taped into the tally book, which is kept forever. And then only once that's done, only once you have the all of the official results of an election in Iowa are paper-based. It's that paper receipt, it's those hand-marked paper ballots. Only once that is done can you export an electronic version of those same results. And so it goes onto a transmedia card, which goes into an envelope, which is signed over the seal by every single member of that precinct board. And then do you guys have a runner that picks things up? And so then a runner from the county auditor's office, that varies. In some counties, they can't get runners. If you can't get a runner, then a member of the Democratic Party and a member of the Republican Party have to bring that back into the auditor's office together. In some counties, local law enforcement go around and pick stuff up and bring it back to the county auditor's office. But that comes back in, and then that is plugged into the election management computer. And the election management computer is this really special computer that has one purpose in life, and that's why there's only one program installed on it. And that is to receive those electronic results and be able to put all those together. It's a convenience thing to be able to put all those together so that we can share election night results. And then as we're preparing the canvas by hand, looking at all of those receipt tapes, we just have another data point to check back and forth to make sure those match up. So this special computer that has one program installed on it that has never been connected to the internet. Again, it serves one purpose in life. It could be a Windows 98 computer. It has never ever been connected to the internet. You put those transmedia devices one by one into the computer, download those electronic results. Some of our counties will do periodic updates. Polk County, for example, where I'm a voter, right at 8:01, they're ready to go. They'll upload all of their absentee results, which is about 50% of the results for the county, just in the case of Polk County. But they'll keep getting those results in. When they're done and they're ready, the Secretary of State's office has sourced special USB drives that, again, they serve one purpose in life, and we actually have laser inscription put on them that says "one and done" as a reminder to the counties that you plug the USB drive into this computer that's never been connected to the internet, and then you go and you take it to a computer in the office that is connected to the internet, and then there's a process that they follow to upload those unofficial results. And once that USB drive is connected to the computer that is connected to the internet to report those results, it has to be e-wasted. It can never be used for anything ever again. It never goes back in to that election computer that has never had access to the internet. And so they report those through the system. On election night, what I'm doing is sitting there waiting for counties to call and be like, "Oh no, I can't, I need you to help me walk through this step," or "I published it, can you take a look to make sure my results make sense?" And then what a county does when they're done reporting their unofficial results, and I don't think I can say this enough, electronic results are always unofficial. Official results are always going to be paper-based in Iowa. They send us an email that has a checklist that they have to complete that says, we did every single one of these steps just like you taught us. And then probably the election night results that you all might be familiar with. Do you guys like tape them up outside of the office, the summary report? No. Some counties will tape them up outside of the office, but it's basically just a summary report that shows, from senator to constitutional amendment, the county-wide results, so that our office can do a quick spot check before we put their results together with the whole entire state. Just to make sure that those were accurately reported in our system. So there is no connection between the tabulators at the voting sites and the election night reporting website. There's no connection between that special election management laptop and that site. It's really, they're just accessing it through the internet on a computer that already accesses the internet and uploading the one file on that very special flash drive.
So can people come in and actually see that?
The uploading of the taking the flash drive and putting it into a computer connected to the internet. Your guys' office is the office has to be open until they're all done with business for the evening. So.
And to be sure now, Carla, if the machine goes down, Carla can't just call the manufacturer and say, hey, I have a problem here, and they can online fix it.
No, they have every single service call, whether it be, the machines do from time to time need maintenance. They need a refreshed roller. They need lubricant, that type of thing. But when they come to do updates, which are approved by the EAC and our office, they have to come and do that in person. So it's the Unison or it's Adkins. So the Adkins representative comes on site and works on the equipment and does any updates, which I said again are approved at the federal level and at the state level, just patches for functionality.
And when he's here, we stand in the vault and watch him do what he's doing to make sure that somebody has an eye on him, and not that he would do anything, but we keep an eye on our equipment
and anything else, anything short of that, any accessing the voting equipment that's not by an authorized maintenance person like Adkins for Unison equipment completely voids the equipment and has to be e-wasted and destroyed, returned to Unison to be destroyed.
Just out of idle curiosity, the absentee ballot, when you're going through and you're looking at that ballot and somebody stars something, and your thought process is, well, they were looking to vote for that individual. What if that's just somebody starring it to say, I want to avoid that part?
Sure. So that type of thing, that level of voter intent is only looked at in a candidate-initiated recount. So in that context, you have a representative of the candidate who initiated the recount, a representative of the candidate they're trying to knock off, who's next in line right in front of them. And then they either pick a third party, a neutral third party, or if they can't agree, the chief judge of your judicial district will pick that person for them. And so that's a 3-person panel, majority rules, they get to decide what the voter's intent was. So we're not looking at that when we're counting ballots for the first time on election day. When we're counting ballots on election day, the tabulator equipment is just saying, did you fill in the voting target or did you not fill in the voting target? Yeah, the oval, the bubble that's on the ballot. So we only get into looking at voter intent outside of the voting target when we're doing it at candidate-initiated hand recount.
Playing devil's advocate for just a moment, isn't that then casting a ballot for the voter? Because if they didn't, let's say they just put a star right by an individual's name, and I want to avoid this.
Yeah.
And they move on. And now you suddenly look at it, well, it just so happened to be by Terry's name. or Susan's or Bill's name. They must have voted for Bill or Susan or Terry, when their intent was to avoid that altogether. Now you have a committee saying, well, they must have voted for them. Are you not casting a ballot then for the voter?
Sure. So I apologize. I don't even know who's up for election this year, so I'm just using names. But if there would be a representative that Terry got to hand select, and that Susan got to hand select, and then this third person. And so if there were hearts and stars all around Susan's name, Terry's representative could say, well, hearts and stars could mean I don't like her. So we're not going to count that. And then her representative would say, well, clearly, they didn't fill in any voting targets here, but they took the time and put hearts and stars around one person for every race. So that's a pattern of voter intent to cast that ballot. And I think this is the only instance where there are picture examples in the Iowa Administrative Code of different situations to guide those recount boards. So probably my best piece of advice is if you want to make sure your ballot is accurately counted for the person you want to vote for, really get after that voting target. Don't waste time with extraneous marks. Just really get after it and fill in that voting target next to the candidate's name. So, and that has gotten, and I think that that's a testament to voter habits. If we did a recount in the 2006 election, where we switched to the optical scan voting equipment, which I think it's important to say, even before there was an optical scan machine at each precinct, we were still using equipment to count ballots. It was just you were putting it in the ballot box, and those were being transported back here, and a central count machine was used. But I think it's just as we've taught voters what those instructions are and said the only way your ballot's going to be counted appropriately is if you fill in that voting target, over time we've had less and less of that as voters know how to fill out their ballot without even having to read the instructions and think about it, as that becomes a habit for voters.
What about this whole thing about ballot harvesting that we keep hearing about?
Sure. So in the 2020 election, so I'll talk about what the rules were and what the rules in Iowa are now. In the 2020 election in Iowa, it was lawful for any other person to collect your voted absentee ballot and bring it back to the auditor's office. That was not just lawful in Iowa, was lawful in a lot of other states. So if I, as the neighborhood do-gooder, went around to all of my neighbors and said, hey, I'm going down to the Polk County Auditor's office. You got an absentee ballot. I'm happy to take it down there with me. I could do that. My neighbors know me, obviously. If their ballot isn't received, they can come knock on my door and be like, Holly, what the heck did you do with those? But by that same token, I could have been a 20-year-old from North Carolina who's here working on a political campaign, and I could be texting people who I know have absentee ballots and saying, hey, you want me to come to your house and pick that up? That was the law. That was lawful. In the 2021 legislative session, we saw a change to who can collect and return absentee ballots. So any voter can have a member of their same household, so somebody who lives at the same address, return their absentee ballot. Again, obviously that's a known quantity. If you give your absentee ballot to your husband or your roommate, and it turns out that wasn't turned in, you can be like, dear husband, what have you done with my ballot? You can also have an immediate family member turn that in, and that is anybody who's related within the 4th degree of consanguinity or affinity. So that is pretty expansive, though as somebody who comes from like a rural farming family, not as expansive as you would think. We probably overuse the word cousin and aunt and uncle in my family, but certainly anybody that I would consider an immediate family member could return my ballot on my behalf. So that's for all voters. And then there's there's a special exception for voters who, due to a reason of a disability, cannot return their own absentee ballot. So think of a homebound neighbor whose kids maybe have all moved either out of the area or out of the state, and in previous years they had relied on someone from church to return their absentee ballot. They can still do that, but that person from their church that doesn't live with them and isn't related to them has to fill out a form. It's a designee form. Every single voter gets a designee form. It's just right on the back of the absentee instructions. And so the voter fills out information, basically says, yes, I said that Molly Wyden can return my absentee ballot. I fill out information saying I, Molly Wyden, returned this. It is in the state that the voter gave it to me. I didn't tamper with it. I didn't change the state that it was in. I'm a registered voter. And so we both sign that form. If I'm returning a ballot as somebody's designee, so I'm not related to them and I don't live in the same household, I have to come into the auditor's office and hand it to the auditor's staff over the counter, and they look at my voter ID, that same voter ID I would turn in on election day, to make sure that I'm the person on the form that the voter said could return their ballot on their behalf. So that's how returning voted absentee ballots works in Iowa. Obviously, that is something that is going to vary from state to state. So not all states, there are some states that don't allow anybody to return an absentee ballot on behalf of the voter. You have to return it yourself. And then there are some states where the law is still what Iowa used to be, that anybody can pick those up. I think that the important thing to think about when folks are talking about, ballot harvesting, picking up absentee ballots, in Iowa, political campaigns used to call it ballot chasing when they were doing what I said, sending volunteers around neighborhoods or texting people, asking them if they could turn in their absentee ballot, is that in order for the absentee ballot to be accepted back into the auditor's office, it has to have been issued through the statewide voter registration system, and it has to have all of those security elements that I talked about earlier. The sequence number has to match, the barcode has to match, the information about the voter has to match. There has to be a signature for the voter. We don't have signature comparison in Iowa, in part because a group from outside of the state sued the state and had the signature verification law overturned. But there has to be a signature there, and if your auditor truly suspects that there's election misconduct, for example, I turn in Joe Smith's absentee ballot, but I signed it Molly Wyden, so we're talking like, not just sloppy, I can't read it, like a whole other person signed the ballot. You can report that to your county attorney as election misconduct, and they're required now by law to investigate when election misconduct is reported to them. So it's not, I couldn't, have a copier at home and make up my own absentee ballots and turn those into the county auditor's office. They would not pass all of those integrity checks that we have in place to ensure that it's an authentic absentee ballot.
So the only thing I can see is we got enough fail safes in Iowa, just to seem like it could be voter fraud, other than the absentee ballots. Now, if I went into some elderly person's house, filled their ballot out for them, they got it legally and all the thing, I could even sign their name on it because there's no signature comparison. How would you catch that?
Well, I think the voter would have to in some way turn over your ballot to them, and that does.
Sometimes there's bribery involved, and let's say somebody went through a nursing home and people just
So in healthcare facilities, the only way to vote in a healthcare facility is through a bipartisan team. So your auditor's office works with all of the healthcare facilities in your county and schedules a time where one Republican and one Democrat go into the facility and I won't say assist, because many of the voters, of course, are still voting a secret ballot. They're filling out their ballot themselves. But outside actors are actually prohibited by law from being inside of the nursing home when that bipartisan team is there. And so that's, hospitals, healthcare facilities, nursing homes. That is how they vote. Now, I mean, I'm not going to, there is no election system that could be put in place that there isn't the opportunity for the type of activity that you've described. That's, yeah, that's,
It can't be, and
yeah,
it just,
yep,
it can't be stopped without eliminating absentee ballots.
Correct.
And I'm not saying I wanna do that.
Sure.
So
And,
it's,
and I think that that's probably a bad joke, funny to attorneys, maybe not funny to the rest of the public. But we don't make things illegal if they're not possible. You know, and it is well known that in our history as a country, bribery has been an issue when we're talking about elections. And that's why it's not only a Iowa felony, it's also a federal felony. And if we're talking about somebody doing that in multiple instances, the great thing is that we typically always find out about those things because people can't help but brag that they've, and that's kind of how that issue, I don't know if you guys remember, I think it was in the 2020 election, there was an issue with absentee votes in North Carolina. There was a candidate taking those, not turning them in, and word about that got out because people couldn't help but talk about it. So, I mean, that is something that could happen. You could pay somebody for their absentee ballot and have them cast it the way that you want them to. But we've had absentee voting in Iowa for over 100 years. I got a little tired of looking once I got back to the code of 1915, so I haven't looked any further back than that. But we've had absentee voting in place for 100 years, and just as a state, as a country, I think that we've made it very clear to people as we get past the Tammany Hall days of the early 1900s that's not acceptable behavior and that they should really value their vote. But you're correct. It is that is a possibility.
I don't think it's widespread enough in Iowa to be a problem either, so. But did you see the movie 2,000 Mules?
Yes, I have seen it.
So what did you think of some of that? I haven't heard any of those people being prosecuted yet.
So-
On camera?
Sure. So part of that is that the group that has that information, and this is part of a number of ongoing lawsuits. So I'm not going to speak to the veracity of the information in 2,000 Mules. I haven't viewed it myself. They certainly haven't shared any information with the state in Iowa.
Was not one
Yeah, and they
of the
weren't
states in
2000 they weren't part of it.
Have a lot lax standards. than
Yep,
we do
and
in Iowa.
we didn't have recognized drop boxes in the 2020 election. That's an option for our counties now, but they have to be at the county auditor's office and under 24-hour surveillance. So that's a management decision that your county auditor gets to make. So there are a number of lawsuits surrounding the movie. One of them is for basically failure to turn over the information to law enforcement. And I did just see a new lawsuit that was filed by a gentleman in Georgia who was prominently featured in the movie for turning in putting 5 absentee ballots in a drop box at the time. Turns out it was for his wife and his 3 adult children. Those were the ones that he turned in, and has proof from those people that those were who he turned in. But
they have the cell phone things.
Yep.
Of those people being at certain nonprofit organizations, and then their same cell phone going to Dropbox after Dropbox after Dropbox all the way around the city. And, I mean, that is just irrefutable there. I mean, I could see how one guy could be accidentally put in the movie as far as he may have been a legit one. But I can't understand, the ones that I saw in there, they had several cell phone pings with that guy's cell phone at multiple boxes. So I can't believe they accidentally got somebody wrong in there, but it's possible, I guess.
Yep, and my understanding, again, I'm not that type of expert. I don't try cases. But from speaking with some of my friends who do criminal prosecution, the cell phone data isn't necessarily as pinpointable or accurate as possible. or as maybe as it was represented in the movie.
Well, I think
There would
it
have,
is.
and so certainly I would encourage if they do have that huge amount of information related to alleged criminal activity, they should provide that and any supporting evidence to law enforcement for prosecution. And my understanding is that that has not been done.
They used those cell phone pings to solve a murder while they were doing
So the authorities had actually already received other information that was more reliable than the cell phones
it.
before
Yeah,
it
but
was
it still
provided to
jived
them.
with, it helped solve the murder, it was evidence that was used.
Yep. And there was, I don't know if anybody's heard of the podcast, I think it's called Making a Murderer. And one of their central cases was about a gentleman who was accused of, found guilty of killing one of his high school classmates. One of the central pieces of information there was cell phone data. Obviously, it was several years ago, much older. And for a variety of reasons, namely being that the prosecution didn't reveal information they're required to reveal to the defendant, that case was recently overturned and that gentleman was released from prison. So cell phone data, when you're talking about doing criminal prosecutions, is not the one piece of be-all evidence. You're going to have other pieces of evidence, which is why...
There's just something else that
Yes.
backs up the rest
Yep,
of it.
which is why I would really encourage, I think True the Vote is the organization that has that information, to turn it over to law enforcement so that they can
Well,
do
in
that
a sense-
traditional
in a sense
work.
they have. I mean, they put it out in the movie.
Yeah, they haven't turned over the underlying information or opened it up to independent analysis.
I don't think that they're keeping it secret from anybody. I haven't heard that. But,
Just
but,
in
you know, when
speaking,
you talk about
yeah.
the cell phone things being accurate, if they can make farm equipment where you can put down a line of fertilizer and come in the next spring with a planter and go exactly right over, all the way across the field, right exactly over that line of fertilizer that was put in with the seeds. They've got the technology to pinpoint you. I mean, even back in the 2000s, the satellite that they had in my semi, I unplugged it in Sioux Falls, and I went home, went back, and my dispatcher could tell that I couldn't get in the exact same parking spot that I was in before, because somebody was there, so I was in the next one, he could tell I was in a borrow 4 days later.
Bill, your theory is sound, except for one small problem. An individual who may know that person sees that they left their phone somewhere. They pick up that phone with the intent of taking them somewhere, puts it in their pocket, goes and drops off these so-called harvested ballots, then goes over by Tom Jones' house and drops off his cell phone and says, "Here, there's your cell
I
phone."
bet there wasn't 2,000 cases of that, though.
I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that there's a shadow of doubt that in the court of law would say, well, that is a
Yeah, no, that's why there
possibility.
has to be other evidence to collaborate it or whatever.
Right.
Okay. Lots of information, thank you.
Yeah, sorry to
that.
take up so much time, but you guys have a really great auditor. She comes to our meetings, she asks great questions. And I will say we actually don't hear from her very often, which is a good thing at the Secretary of State's office. So things are going really well across the state of Iowa, but certainly very well in your county.
In order for there to be election fraud in Iowa, on the computer end of it, for sure, not only would your office have to be in on it, then there would have to be many auditors across the state that are also in on it, and I do not believe that's the case. So,
And I would not this election where the Board of Supervisors is on the ballot, but for the 2023 city school election, we're always looking for precinct election officials. So we always invite elected officials for the city school election. Partisan elected officials, since they're not on the ballot, are welcome to serve as precinct election officials for the city school election. And I know that can be a really great and enlightening experience as to kind of peel back the layers of the onion to see what that process looks like.
A couple of us have gone through the training.
Yeah.
In the past.
Oh, great.
We were backups, just in case during COVID. that
Oh, yep.
Somebody couldn't make it.
Yep. So, excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. If you think that these are helpful, I left a big old stack over in the auditor's office. If you want to hand them out, or you've had constituents reach out and express concerns. We made this with the Iowa Association of County Auditors. So it's co-branded with them in our office. So.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
We'll have Chris come in, I'll be.
Okay.
So did you see a video of the dachshund costume? With the Bronco rider on the back?
Let me
I
go
thought
grab
it
my
was
drainage. Okay.
Literally the entire Holton family has that shooting around because we all have dachshunds, right? And so I think it was Brittany over in Littlemore. She sends it off to me and she says, "Here's an idea for Oli and Opal." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I opened it up and I just started busting up laughing. I'm like, "Yeah, that works. That'd be great." I could especially see Oli walking around with that because he's the most active.
Another one I liked on the TV is there was a mannequin sticking out the guy's back, and he was in a box, and he was behind me. It looked like she was carrying him.
That's right.
Okay, Chris.
I don't know where we're at.
Right, your subject.
You,
We're at me. Okay.
drainage matters.
Okay. Let's see. You wanted to know about soil or fish and wildlife?
Yeah.
Okay. So I pulled up, I didn't make copies, I'm so sorry. I pulled up every parcel that they have for fish and wildlife. This is the list of parcels that they have.
It's more than I thought there would have been.
Wow,
But they're not in,
Oh, I suppose, yeah, there's several of them in one spot.
that could be.
Yeah.
And they're not, there's some in Newton and Eden Center
Valley.
and Mount Valley. They're not very widespread. So what I did was I put the parcels by district, what drainage district they were in. I put them by parcel, what district they were in. And then I took all the districts and I made a list of when they were billed last, in the last 5 years. So totally for the last 5 years, would have been billed $14,000. So it's not a huge number. Some that are blank have not been billed in the last 5 years. There may be some laterals and just haven't had any work done. I don't know what you want to do with this information, and I can make copies of all of this for you.
It'll be kind of discussed during this part.
Yeah, we'll be coming up to it.
Oh, okay. So that,
Leave it with us.
oh gosh, yes, I'll be here. So I did that. Next week, we're going to talk about the Adam LaCour and the Thompson, the private deal that they're doing to put a tile underneath the road out on Bancroft Road here to drain some of the parcel to the south, to go into the north.
Just outside of town.
Yeah, just outside of town. And then I have what's on here, so.
And Scott's involved in that?
Yep.
Okay.
That's what, 6-8 months ago? we
Yeah.
did that?
Yeah. So it took the engineers a while. They privately hired Jacobson Westergaard. So,
They're gonna bore underneath the road, I assume.
they will, and that will be secondary road payment.
Oh, did you put that petition in for me that we talked about? I guess I never came into the office on that. Sharon Johnson, we talked about, where did we talk about? Oh, we talked at the EMS meeting.
I believe I did.
Okay,
Okay,
with
but I don't remember the
with
district.
Rudness Brothers. One.
Is this by the trees then, or?
Yeah, I'll check again.
Sorry, I told you about it at a
Oh, no, that's fine. I had written it down.
non-meeting.
No, I had written it down. So And it was Sharon Johnson?
DD one, lap
Seven?
four, sub
I think it's lap
two,
4.
one or something.
Yeah.
It's also Marjorie Mullen.
Yeah, it's up in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's the one that we were always working with Schultze on.
And the Ron Peterson piece that's north
Yes.
of that and.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's DD 1 lap 4.
Mhm.
I will check it out again, but I had written it down.
Okay,
So,
all right.
okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So nothing else for regular drainage?
I was just noticing if we don't get much rain this weekend, we could probably just do a walking tour up the river to see where the problems are.
Let's do it.
Oh, see where we need to clean the river out
Yeah.
at?
We could take rangers and mud bog up there just a little bit.
I don't think they'll allow that.
I feel like I'm not gonna come with.
I don't think the DNR will be.
No,
You
thank you.
read about
Yeah, I
all
don't
the stuff
mind
they're
it.
finding in the
Put
Mississippi
those
River
boots on.
because
I have
of
some
record low,
inlaid.
No,
from all
really?
kinds of Civil War
I have a
artifacts and
croquet
stuff like
match,
that.
so I can't.
Buried in the banks.
Just like Lake Powell.
They stop barge service, because barges can't make it down there.
Yeah, even all the way
Oh,
up here.
Oh my gosh.
Started
So
down
that's
far.
gonna impact grain.
No, maybe we're gonna get some
Exporting.
snow, you know.
Yeah,
They
you never
put in kind of barriers down by New Orleans to keep the salt water from coming up
Mhm.
Crazy, isn't it?
and back.
Yeah, trust me, I don't wanna think about that.
So are
Notice
you,
of downpour. on
okay, number 6,
Saturday.
consider for approval bids and specs for DD
Rain on Friday.
92.
Okay, and I had forwarded you the information, correct? Okay, so here is the project manual. I did have them send me copies because they wanted you guys to have one. Yeah, it was a lot. I did read over it. It looks normal, looks right. With your approval of it, Jacobson Westergaard will send this out for bids. They have my list, and they have my list in entirety. Even if they don't have my current liability insurance, they would have to provide it for this anyway. So either way, we would get it, so that way we don't eliminate anybody. And then they also have some others. You know, we've used B&B before and whatever, so they might have some others that they'll send it to. So,
And June 30th is the completion date of 2023.
correct. And they would have quotes due to Jacobson Westergaard by November 23rd. And then we would have it on the agenda for the next Tuesday. And Colin would give us his recommendation based on the bids that he received. What they're doing is eliminating the culvert, and it's ditch, culvert, ditch. They're going to take out the culvert and make it one continuous ditch.
For a very short distance.
Yeah.
470
The culvert's just a
feet, I
weak-
think.
Weak link in the chain.
Yeah, 440 feet.
So the quotes are due by November 23rd.
Mm-hmm. And that will give people a chance to get out to the site if they need to. They would send $100 for a set of plans to Jacobson Westergaard, and that's how they receive it, whether they get electronically, by mail, whatever. That's how they'll do it.
And since this is a upsizing of the system, it's an improvement.
So once we get that kind of thing going,
Amazing, you know, the first 10 years I was here, I don't think we had one improvement. And all of a sudden, the last couple of years, it's worth doing the improvements.
right? Well, prices aren't gonna get cheaper, and the pipe is not gonna get bigger on its own.
In a lot of cases, it's not gonna get better, what's underground.
Exactly.
You know, you look at inflation, I don't think inflation has affected as much on some of these cleanup. It's been pretty steady there.
I think so.
Competitive,
I don't think that the contractors have had to raise their prices a ton,
just on materials maybe.
Fuel.
Materials, yeah.
but it hasn't gone up a lot.
Susan, you gonna
I will. I'll make the motion to approve the bid and specs for DD 92 as presented.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Smith and seconded by Derby to approve the bids and specs for DD 92, replacing culvert with a channel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Discussion with possible action regarding funding for counties that have federal lands and receive payments in lieu of taxes. And you've got that paperwork that, Chris provided for us.
Oh, are you talking about this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Once you hand it to her.
okay.
So,
Sounds like, what did you say there was 15,000 cents?
I think it was
in the last
14
5 years or
something in the
14
last,
something?
in the last 5 years.
So our 100,000 would last quite a while at that
I think
pace.
you can't spend it, you gotta do it within 5 years.
Yeah, and some of those.
so
Sorry.
we got that information, Carla got that information, just so we know that we can't put it into a fund, some type of
To be
perpetual.
expended, yeah. And it can't be used for anything before a certain time period. You can't, go
Can't
back so
backdate it.
far.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't?
It says right
You
in
can
there.
go back though?
It can go back to a certain point, but not any farther than,
What's the certain?
I think it's COVID period.
Oh, can't go back for the 5 years to clean up this, okay.
Right. And I think a lot of our expenses were probably before that COVID period.
Yeah.
So,
And some of them, like DD2 was already cleaned out,
Yeah.
so you wouldn't have that huge bill.
mhm.
I don't remember right offhand the other huge amount that was billed in what district.
You can't put it in a fund and count it as expended. So we gotta spend it on something else in the next 5 years, is it?
And if you don't spend it, you have to give it back.
And we figured out that there's no big, ties to it that's gonna,
Restrict us in the future.
yeah,
No, it's pretty much like the ARPA funds.
okay. So,
Participant announcements off.
it was a good thought, it was a good,
We're always looking to save the taxpayers' money.
absolutely.
Well, especially where the people that are providing the money didn't pay.
Yes. Yeah, I thought it was
We
a,
still can use it for some of that, I guess.
You could set aside a certain amount, say, 15,000 or something for in the next 5 years to go towards that, maybe.
And then
You
once
just
we
don't-
get
But
to-
what if we don't
once
use
get
it,
to-
then we
well, then
lose
once
it?
we
Well,
get to
you
the deadline,
spend
we
it
get-
somewhere else before the deadline.
Yeah, you
Oh.
just gotta spend it.
Just
somewhere.
earmark it for that purpose. You would think you'd be able to do that in your system.
Well, I would just
just have to keep track of
be
it.
a payment. We would do a transfer.
Right.
Into that certain fund,
Right.
and then it would just be there.
Just have to identify it each year in the budgets that
Yeah.
it's available for that purpose.
And this is, make sure we know when the deadline is, so we won't space it.
I think that really was a good spot for that, for some of that money, but now seeing these numbers, we're realizing that we're not needing those kinds of funds. But I like the idea of earmarking $15,000 or $20,000 of the first batch of it. You never know, we might have a big, project.
You could start with 20,000 earmarked for the first, for the next 5 years or 4 years, and then decide if you're gonna need it that last year. And then identify where the rest of it would go.
Would you want it in a specific
For those
fund?
districts that have the, that,
Because, you look at some of those laterals, they may never be worked on. And if they were, you could do a transfer from the main of 57 to 57 lat 12 and easily take care of it that way. I don't know if you want to put
And would it be at the original schedule of prorated?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would leave their amounts in there as a parcel.
I'd be perfectly happy with 20,000 for the first 4 years and then identify after that if you're here
Earmarked
needed.
for
Yeah.
whatever may happen in the future.
I like that.
So that would leave the other 80,000 to be determined then.
As much as I'd like to have it be put to supervisor bonuses, I think that's probably a better.
We'll not make that a motion.
No, you're not.
No.
Okay, so Bill, let's get this straight. You want me at the pay convention, as I like to call it, to take that money and move it over for bonuses?
See, that would really like it if you was to come up with that.
There is a certain amount, just to clarify, in the rules, it does say there is a certain amount of this for administration.
Yeah, so that means that all that money can go to the drainage clerk who really needs it.
I want to make it noted on that I'm
This is
not
taking a turn I
participating
don't
at all in this particular discussion.
Good
So
lady.
I am going to.
I'm just stating the
Well,
rules.
I bring up moving this money to the drainage clerk and you guys suddenly back out of this? What's going on here?
Again,
don't
I
understand it.
choose to not
See how
participate
good
in this
defensive she
discussion.
got right away?
So,
Feel of love here, Chris.
if anybody would like to make a motion, because we do have possible action on this, to do 20,000 in a fund, we think we can manage it. I mean, is
Well,
that,
I think before we get anywhere with this like that,
yes?
we need to make a motion to move forward with applying for this money.
Accepting, yeah, we got.
Oh, I thought we did that already.
No,
Oh, I don't have a clue.
Oh,
we
I
have
thought
not made that motion
Yeah, I think we were gonna find out what we could do first.
before we actually
And
jumped
then,
in.
and then
Oh, yeah, Carla was gonna be making that
So,
determination and she did.
possible action would be to go ahead.
Okay,
I think our first, we just wanted to be assured what we can and can't do before we make that jump.
all right. So that is the possible action. Anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to move forward with the paperwork to get into the, what do they call this, the federal lands and receive payments in lieu of taxes.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion by Derby and seconded by Jensvold regarding funding for counties that have federal lands and receive payments in lieu of taxes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You too, Bill?
Participant announcements on.
All right,
I
so
was
motion,
just thinking I should probably put it out there that I really don't believe that the supervisors should get bonuses, just in
Motion.
case somebody misinterprets my tongue-in-cheek humor.
motion passed.
Okay, let me cross that off the list.
You know they can segment the video.
Okay, so we're gonna put on next week's agenda then, if we can,
We can put it back on the same way.
put it on the same
Another
way.
action would be how we would allocate it.
Yes. All right. So,
That comes from the
do
federal
we have
government, doesn't it?
anything for open
Yes.
forum?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
what we wanted to find out is if we could put it in an account, because the federal lands that are in the county, that are in drainage districts, don't pay for their drainage improvements in their areas, and lots of times the problem is in their land from tree roots or whatever in the system. And I thought there's a good place for this federal money would be to pay what they don't pay, that the rest of the landowners in that drainage district have to make up for their share. So if we use that federal money to pay for what the federal didn't pay in the first place, that was what I thought would be a good idea, a good use for the money.
So 92, if I'm not mistaken, that's where the conservation butts up with somebody else.
DD 92 is completely separate from this.
Okay.
That's what
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
DD
full.
92 is just completely.
Yeah.
There is
That's
north
just a
of
normal
that some
district.
federal land.
There's-
Okay, that's what I was
But
thinking.
it's not that district.
Okay.
There's county land attached to the DD 92.
It's in the county line. It's affected.
But if you're interested in looking up those federal lands,
You
on
can go on our
Beacon.
Beacon site and there's a tab you can click on.
And it'll show you all the little spots of federal land all over the county that don't pay taxes,
You just
Wow.
click on one
and
parcel.
they don't pay for
and
drainage
then
when
you go
there's
back to the
drainage
map
in your
and it'll
district.
highlight all
In
Is
of
the
them.
there a
last-
lot?
In the last 5 years, there was $14,000, Chris looked up, which thank you, Chris, for doing the work.
Yeah,
There was $14,000 worth that they did not pay, because they don't,
but
you know.
then figure out what the taxes are on those.
So what happens, just as an analogy here, is the federal government doesn't pay for it, even though those are our tax dollars. So the county taxpayers actually would pay for it twice because of the maintenance we would have to
The
keep.
drainage landowners
Yeah,
have to make up that difference.
So in the
So
So
past,
they're
they have paid the $14,000.
They're paying the federal government to have that land, and then they're also paying the county to
Fix
maintain
it,
the
yep.
land. So they're paying twice.
Wow.
But they don't see it as a tax that they need to pay.
Well, of course, you gotta get
So-
around it some way.
If you talk to the treasurer, Julie, she still sends out those tax. They're on our tax base. They just don't pay them.
see, in the past, there was a payment in lieu of taxes line item in the federal budget that was always up for debate. And people like Arizona and Utah and Nevada, they all really rely on that. And the formula for determining this, there was a minimum of 50,000 per year for 2 years, but it's also based on population, you know. So there's some, Minnesota got a heck of a lot more money than Iowa did, because they got the Itasca and all that.
Mhm.
So they
So
put a
ours
lot of
was the
thought into it.
minimum of 50 this year and 50.
But counties like Franklin County didn't get anything because they don't have federal lands.
so of the 100,000 that we're gonna get, we're gonna put away 20,000 for future expenses that they do not pay.
For 5 years, you're gonna do?
Yeah, and then at 5 years, if
We
that
have to
20,000 is
spend
still
by
there,
5 years.
Gotcha.
that's when the supervisor bonuses will come.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
You write that down again.
All right, what do we have over there for open forum?
Oh, this is just claims.
Oh, those are county claims.
I'm
Is there,
assuming all these have to be all
So-
signatured by all of us, they're all claims.
we are,
That's what you normally do.
Well,
And then there was
it
one,
used to be.
We usually just sign it once.
oh, yeah. Well, because I've had some extra payments here and there, so.
Guys, I forgot to introduce, this is Angela Nelson, she is our hardest working producer in radio, that's
Yeah.
the one I always tease about.
I'm usually at Hancock County Supervisors meetings, so this is a treat for me.
oh,
Okay.
we're way
I've-
more
Come
fun.
see you
I've seen
guys.
you somewhere before.
I don't know, all over the place.
Yeah, no, I could have been anywhere.
I drive all over the place, so.
Yeah, she has frequent flyer miles between here and the Minnesota border.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Anyway, thanks, guys, appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
You too.
Yeah, you guys have a good one.
You too. And then there was the manure management in there.
Got it.
You need to sign this one too.
No, and someone,
And then I don't know if Carla talked about this dry report or if she wants to.
I read it,
Okay,
Open
so
forum.
you had it?
it was sent to us.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, it was just in her folder,
Only
so,
ours was in color.
yeah, okay.
It was, the only question I had on that was, the leak we had in the bathroom, is that gonna be reflected, was it before, or did they do the report before or after that leak?
That I don't know. I didn't see it, the
Because
report.
it could have, affected the report, if it was after it.
So I have something for open forum. There's,
We-
are we there?
We're still at open forum right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's still some issues at the shooting range, at Hog's Back.
Well, I can tell you that AJ is announcing it every day on the radio when they have to be.
Really?
under there. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Every day in the around the noon hour, he's always notifying people on the
Okay.
radio
Well-
exactly what time that day they have to be out of there.
I think our constituents, my constituents, would like to know and hear from Robert Schwartz on what the plan that he's come up with that we discussed during a meeting. So I'd like to put that on next week's agenda so that we can hear what that is.
Just identify it as Robert Schwartz report on shooting range
Is that all right?
updates.
just so you're all aware.
So evidently we don't have to approve a temporary wage increase.
No, that's just a receipt.
That's just,
Okay, so March, what's next week? I think I had something else too.
Oh, did everybody know about the, thing this Saturday? I gotta look up what time it is, at the Fine Arts Forum for our county, home base Iowa.
Oh, yeah,
oh, we got a card on there.
I didn't catch, on her report, at our meeting that it was on the 12th.
Mhm.
I gotta see what time it is, whether I can be here or not, cause
I
I'm
think
supposed to
I
be
had
in
it.
Ames that day.
in my calendar. It is at 9 o'clock breakfast, 9:30 program, 10 o'clock networking, 10:30 farewells, 9 o'clock if you want to eat.
So do we need to put something on the board for an agenda?
Well, this is the flyer she has, if you want it.
Who's she?
Winworth Bethco's.
Oh, well, just so it's an open meeting, if you would all be
If
there.
we're all three gonna be there, we need to do that. Are you, everybody going or not?
No,
Is this through Winward Betco? Or is it through Mary Lou?
This is Mary Lou.
okay.
With,
Well,
Veterans Affairs?
according to the radio, it was coordinated by
Oh, all right.
Winworth Betco, because it's home base Iowa County.
Okay. But they want people to RSVP because of the breakfast?
If you're gonna eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably better at least post the flyer, maybe.
Mhm.
Go on.
We have that home base Iowa thing on Saturday.
Because I'm not sure yet.
And there's gonna be
Depends
a
on what
board
race is
meeting at the Bowman at 9, so it'll be
Now, there's,
Do you have one of those flyers? All I got was a
there's,
picture on my phone.
Oh,
There's chances of
You
it.
can email it
80
to
and
us and we can
90%
print it.
chances on Friday and Saturday, I think.
So, yes, probably.
If I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna have to drive back from Ames and then back down to Ames, because I have to give a report in the afternoon.
Mine has got a 92% chance of rain on Friday and an 87% chance of rain on Saturday.
I'll probably be there if it's gonna rain. I think she put, has a bunch of notes for next week's agenda, Carla.
okay.
And then I'd like to also put on there, a report from Matt Dubay on the,
Okay, we just did get the invite for
situation
the
of
home base Iowa.
the Northeast
Oh, we just got an email.
in my district on, Roger Cruz property.
Or I did you?
So we'll need to
I
ask
think I read it
Kelly.
earlier.
Well, it was in her
Kelsey
report
as
at
well,
the meeting,
if
but I
we
didn't
need-
catch what day it
if
was.
she can't sit in on it, if we need to talk
This
to,
is the actual.
is it Brandon from Hancock County?
Oh,
Who's the,
Okay, I'll forward it to you,
what's his name?
so that she's got a copy of it.
Yep,
Yeah. You know who I mean,
yep.
so that he would need to be here if she's not available.
Okay.
Okay.
Now that you said the wrong name, I can't think of the right one.
Sorry.
Which one?
What's the Hancock County, county attorney's name?
Blake.
Blake.
Berg.
I knew it was B.
That's,
It's the only Blake I know. Blake
that's
Berg.
not it either.
Yeah.
You're not helping the situation.
Blake Norman.
Norman,
Thank you.
there you go.
All right, anybody have anything else that we need?
Yes.
Norman?
Oh, you do?
Can we go back to open forum?
Certainly, yep.
Still are.
I got the Reno Dry thing and I emailed it to you.
Yeah, I read that.
So I just wanted,
My question was, did they do the testing after the leak or before the leak?
Oh,
what leak?
The one in the
Bathroom.
bathroom that we had to dry
Oh,
out?
no, it was just a couple of days ago.
So it could have been reflective of that too, you know, if we had extra moisture here in that central
Well,
area.
you know, as dry as it's been, the results should have been really good,
Yeah, that's true.
you know, because there's no groundwater.
It still takes masonry a while to dry out.
Yeah, no,
It's
that
not
is
instant.
true. I mean,
So I forwarded you the invite for that has the brochure that you can hang up for Saturday.
the
Okay.
numbers for the most part showed improvement, didn't they? The way I read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely showing through.
Yeah.
It's not overnight though.
I mean, I'll have to admit, it still seems like voodoo
I didn't have any
type
questions.
thing. I had a banana.
What were you gonna trade me for
Are we,
Butter.
are we on number
Oh, I'll
nine?
let
your
you
butter
have that.
bar?
Are we on number
I don't
nine
even
yet?
need anything, I'll just give it to you.
Are we on number 9 yet?
Yes,
I'll make a motion to approve semi-monthly county claims.
I'll second it.
we have a motion by Dinsmold and seconded by Derby to approve the semi-monthly county claims. All in favor? Aye. Motion passed. If we don't have anything left for open forum, then we are.
Molly, put her cards in your boxes so that if you have any questions, you can call her.
Good. That's interesting. Did you invite her, Carla?
I did.
It was interesting. And very timely.
I just thought with the movie and, I don't know, with the election coming up, it'd be good to have her here.
Throw it
I mean,
around.
the movie had nothing to do with Iowa, 2,000 Mules.
I don't know, I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either, but I want to see it.
But, I mean, you can't watch that and not come to the conclusion that there was Russian products.
Did
on
you
the
adjourn?
stage.
All right, we're adjourned.
We're on task. Now we can say whatever we want.
I had cameras on.
I'm having a peanut butter cup.